What's up YouTube? Jason here with Bite My Bits. This is going to be, I think, the fourth Zeus server update. That's my dual Xeon Plex media server that I've been working on. I think there's going to be one more video after this that's going to be probably tying everything back together with the hardware that I purchased, you know, the stuff that I did to it overall and the test results as far as what it can handle. But up until now, I've been really focusing on the cooling aspect of my server, how to get everything, all the temperatures underneath control. Now that they're under control, I've been working on software side of it. Now, everything has been kind of delayed because I was working for a while on a Western Digital video, and that did take most of my time. So I finally, since this the video has been released and I've had the weekend off and plus the extra 3 days for having Thanksgiving and everything, I finally actually been able to get some stuff done. So today I'm going to cover some of the software stuff that I've done with Unraid. So it might be a little boring to some that like more of a run and gun Plex server solution, but to me this has been really exciting. So I'm just going to kind of cover and talk about some of the stuff that I found or that I've done to Zeus. Okay, so to start things off, I do have some talking points here, but I'm gonna do a quick overview of my server. So I'm gonna switch to the screen. Right now, I have all but one drive in my server. So as you can see, let's see, I go to my main, and I've used 29.2 terabytes. I still have another drive copying right now. I think that has a couple terabytes left on it, so I'm looking at probably about 32 to 33 terabytes worth of storage that is going to be taken up by the time I'm done. Right now I have an 8 terabyte primary disk here, and this is at the top. This isn't going to be the final setup because I'll talk a little bit more about the parity drive here in a second, but and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 4 terabyte drives in addition to that. And then down here, as you can see, I also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drives going through the pre-clear screening right now. Now, this is important to test your drives, to write all the zeros to the drives, and then verify that all the zeros are written to make sure that there's no issues with the hard drives. So I am still running those through. I actually just put a lot of those in either last night or this morning. So those still have to get worked through. And then as soon as I'm done copying the files that I'm working on now, it'll be another 4 terabyte drive. So all in all, once I'm said and done, I'm looking at 52 terabytes of usable space with a total of 60 terabytes in the server. Now the difference is I also have an 8 terabyte drive right here, that this is going to be my parity disk. Now, something that I kind of learned when I was dumping files to the server is and this is just what I decided to do. It probably is not the smartest thing in the world, but it moved things along a lot faster. Now, Unraid is not necessarily known for its copying speed when it comes to writing new data to the server, from what I've found out. Basically, it's because it's writing a duplicate of everything that you're doing to your parity drive, or at least more or less. It's not a duplicate, but it's writing data to your parity drive as you're writing data to your main drive. So because of that, it slows things down. So what I found was two things. For one, I disabled cache completely. I actually have a couple cache drives in here, which I'll talk about soon, but I disabled cache completely. I tried it with cache a couple different ways, including adding the cache and then limiting, you know, like the minimum amount of space it needed, but I kept running into issues because I found that I was actually able to copy files faster when I did 2 or 3 at a time, because it would utilize that bandwidth faster, or more saturate the bandwidth for multiple hard drives if I was copying from multiple hard drives to a different hard drive. So basically, a cache drive just made everything complicated, and it kept bringing me to a stop. It would have write errors, say that it was full, even though it's a long story. But the point is, if you're going to be copying this much data from multiple sources at the same time, it's either better to make it to where your cache drive has a high minimum, you know, like something like 30 gigabytes before it'll start pushing it directly to the array, or B, just get rid of the cache drive completely and write directly to your drives. And then again, as far as the parity goes, it'll slow you down completely to also write to the parity as you go along. So if you're willing to take the risk, you've tested your drives, you know they're good, and you're willing to take the risk, for me, I was willing to take that risk and just write everything 2 or 3 times faster without the parity drive. And then once I am done and I've got everything copied over, got all my hard drives into the system, then I'm going to plug in, or I'm going to attach that last 8 terabyte drive as the parity drive, and I'm going to let it do it. I'm let it do its thing, and then it's going to build the parity for the whole array, and I'm going to be backed up, and I'm going to have 52 terabytes worth of data safe-ish. I mean, safe as it can be with one parity drive. Something that I have went through is I was going through and copying files, right, getting everything moved over. But while I was doing that, I was kind of going through and taking a look at some apps. Oh, by the way, something weird with Unraid, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if this is a Windows thing or an Unraid thing, but when I was copying large files, like a whole directory full of TV shows or a whole directory full of movies, I had to copy them twice, which was weird because I would copy it the first time and then I would notice a couple folders were missing, right? So then I had to go back through, copying them again, tell it to skip the files that already existed, and it went a lot quicker because it only missed maybe like, I don't know, 20% of the original set of files, but it's still kind of weird that I had to do that. So I just wanted to notate that, ask the community, anyone who has experience with Unraid, why is it that I had to do that? And this happened almost every folder that I copied over that had more than maybe 20 or 30 folders in it. I had to go back through and recopy that folder and just tell it to skip the files that were already existing in order to make sure that I had all of my data before I, wrote zeros to that data and moved it over to Zeus. So that's kind of weird. I don't know, again, if it's Windows or Unraid, but I thought I'd throw that out there and see if anyone knows why that happened. But anyways, I was going through, there's something in that I found, and it's in the plugins, but it installs this thing called Community Applications. Now this Community Applications is pretty cool because it puts all of the applications, as far as I know, all the major applications for Unraid that you can install as plugins. It puts them all in one spot. You can search through them, you can install them easily, just little add buttons, you can configure them. So while I was copying stuff over, I went through and I kind of explored some of these different apps, and I found some very useful applications that I really have found or come to like. And there's a couple I wanted to talk about because I was pretty impressed by what they are and what they do and how easy they were to install. So first of all, we have this backup and restore application data. Now, I haven't actually configured a lot of this because I used a different program, and I'll actually go down here. This is the unmounted disk or unassigned disk, or unassigned devices. Basically what this does is allow you to add a disk outside of your array and outside of your cache drives as a separate drive that you can use for things like app data. In my example, I used it for Plex. See, when I was building this server, I bought two 480 gigabyte SSDs. I forgot what brand they are, but I'll link that in the description. I think they're SATA something. Okay, anyway, or SanDisk. I think they're SanDisk. So I bought two of those, and I decided to use one of those specifically just for Plex, right? Probably also with Plex Pi. Actually, yes, I did assign Plex Pi to it. But either way, there's this backup and restore app data thing that'll allow me to go in there and automatically at certain times whenever I want to back up all of that data and store it on my array, so I won't lose anything if that disk happens to fail. So that's kind of a cool application, something that I definitely needed when I added this extra one. And I did add the extra drive separate from the array with this program because I'm using the other 480 gigabyte as my cache drive, and I would honestly prefer a 1 terabyte SSD for my cache drive, but it was just kind of expensive. It's almost twice the cost for a decent one, and I don't know. So I'm gonna gimp along with this 480 gigabyte as a cache drive. I'm gonna see how that works for me. In the future, I might end up upgrading that possibly, but for now, I wanted as much as that cache drive available that I could possibly get. So there's some other knick-knack stuff here that, clean up app data. I won't really talk about too much. Then there's another one, this Dynamics Cache Directories. Basically keeps all the folder information in memory to prevent unnecessary disk spin up. I actually like this because when you're going through and your disk have shut down, or they spun down just to save power, because that's something that Unraid does, you can run into some issues where your Explorer window will kind of hang for a little bit. And it's hanging because it's spinning up those drives to get your folder list. So what this does is it stores all that to memory to where everything is able to be browsed instantaneously, and you don't have any delay unless you try to access something. So I found this to be kind of a useful program for me, just because it allows me to browse through my files faster if they've been sitting there for a while and they shut down. Let's see, then we have some CPU monitoring stuff, which I actually found a different application for. Let's say, the pre-cleared disk script. This thing has been just amazing. It allows me to go through and pre-clear on my disk with the graphic user interface rather than the command line. So I've been using that completely. This is something I didn't even know existed, and I want to touch base on this a lot, but ransomware protection. Okay, I've been worried about this for a long time. If anyone in my network gets ransomware, what's that going to do to my server? Now, you could do things like lock down your server so only you have access to that. But what does that happen if for some reason I happen to get unlucky and I get it on my server, right? Or on my computer, the one that has access to my server. Well, this program, this ransomware protection, this is actually pretty cool, because what this does is it actually creates bait files. You can either have it on every folder or just the root folder. I set it only as the root folders, but it creates bait files, and they're just like PDF, Word documents, things like that. And basically what it does is it monitors those files to see if anything changes with them. So if you change the data, like if you try to open them and save them, then that's a change. If you try to rename them, that's a change. If you do anything with those files, delete them, that's a change. And within 1/10 of a second of it finding out that something happened to those bait files, it locks your server down. Just locks it down, stops it in its track. Now, I made it to where it only goes on the root folder of the server, because I tried it the other way and it was just a lot of files. It was kind of annoying. But I made it to where it's only on the root folder. The way I look at it is that if I do get infected by a ransomware, it's going to affect the first files it can find, and that's going to be the files on the root of whatever share that it can access. So if it touches those files on any of the shares, which it creates files on each share, then it will lock it down. It will make everything read-only, and it'll bring up alerts, and I have to manually go through and confirm that there's no threat before it gets reactivated. So that is cool, and I think that if anybody has an Unraid server and you're worried about your files, you should most definitely install this plugin. It's easy to install. It's easy to configure. I tried, by the way, I tried this whole bait share creation thing. This thing's a headache. It creates like 15 different share folders with like 50,000 files, and I understand the usefulness of it. I think it's more of a headache than anything, because I don't really want that many shares floating around in my share folder. So, but you can kind of play with it. Either way, this is a badass program that's going to protect my server. Hopefully, maybe it's not 100%. Maybe it can still be, worked around by some malware or some ransomware. But I still like that level of protection on the server to keep all of my data safe, especially when you got like 50 some terabytes or whatever worth of shit. You don't want to lose it just because one person gets ransomware, or I get ransomware. Okay, now we have, let's see, this net data thing. This is actually kind of cool. Basically, this allows me to monitor all of the information about my server that's going on. It'll tell me how much RAM's being used, how much CPU's being used. It's accessible over the network, through just like a web page and a port. So if I wanted to, I could enable it to where I can access this from outside my network just by doing some port forwarding on my router. So this is kind of a neat way to keep an eye on of all of the activity going on my server, and I really like it. Another thing that's kind of cool, and I was really kind of worried about this at first, but I found out that it's super simple, is PlexPy. PlexPy is actually installable through the Community Applications plugin that I installed earlier and talked about, and it's easy to configure and just walk through just like you would a normal PlexPy. It's actually way more easier to install than it was on Windows, just because it's all in one package and everything's installed right away. So that was actually kind of cool. That I didn't lose out on that. I'm still going to look at carrying over my database, which I think I might be able to do, but I just got it installed. I went through the basic setup process, it connected to my server and did the basic stuff, but I haven't carried over any of my data, so there's that. Speaking of carrying over my data, now, I originally went through and tried to move the database, my Plex data folder, from my old server to Zeus. right? I shut down Plex. I shut down Plex on both computers, copied all of the files over, all of the database stuff, all the metadata, thumbnails, everything over. Took like 3 or 4 hours. I mean, it's like, 185 gigabytes worth of stuff, right? And they're all little tiny files, and it takes forever. I mean, it took a long time. So I went over and I carried over everything, and I started Plex up, and everything carried over. I mean, I could see all of my poster arts, all of my configurations, all the stuff I've watched, everything. It worked perfectly. Going from a Windows machine to a Unraid machine, it worked perfectly. Except, me and my glory, I decided that I was going to change things up. I was going to change the way my libraries are set up. I'm gonna add some different categories. I'm gonna have like a section for kid cartoons or horror movies, or I decided to kind of reorganize and restructure, because my server's been the same since day one, and it's been growing, and it's been harder and harder to find things, and I just wanted to break it down just a little bit more. And because I did that, I added and removed some libraries, it ended up having to go through and rescan everything anyways. So basically I wasted all that time copying shit over, because when I went through and changed shit around, it just said screw all that stuff and started over. So for those of you who are looking to go from a Windows machine over to an Unraid, just keep in mind that you can copy things over. You just have to keep your structures the same, or it'll rescan everything and it's going to reset everything, and you're going to have to go through all that process again. Now let's talk about some stuff that I learned along the way. Again, the parity drive, I found it's just a lot faster for the initial dump if you're willing to take the risk to not use the parity drive. Remove the cache, because it's kind of a pain in the ass and it's kind of pointless to try when you're doing major file dumps. So those are two big things. If you're originally switching over and you have a lot of data, don't use parity. And don't use cache. As long as you're willing to risk the parity, don't use it. Another thing was kind of felt stupid, but when I added the pre-cleared drives that I had to the array, and I tried to go through and create new shares, I was having issues creating those new shares. And this is just a new thing, but I found out that you do have to kind of scroll down a little bit and hit the format button, which formats all of those newly pre-cleared drives into the XTF or whatever, XTS file system, so your system can use it and recognize it. So when I initially booted it up and started the array and added the drives with the new array, none of them were formatted, so they were technically unmountable. So I wasn't able to create anything. So it's just kind of a stupid thing for me, but I figured I'd tell you about it. Then when I went into create the array, actually, there's a couple different options. You have option to fill up each drive individually, and then it just goes into the next one. You have a high water fill up option, where it's like it takes I don't remember the exact verbiage, but it takes like half of the free space left, and it determines whether or not your next available drive is the half of that or something like that. Anyways, it fills it up almost all the way, and then it starts over a new one, and then almost all the way, and then another one. And when I say almost, it's like 50% to 75%, and then it goes to the next one. And then the other option is mostly free, so it'll just copy the data to the disk that has the most free space. I used high water. Doesn't really matter, because I was filling it up as full as I could when I was moving files over, so it didn't really matter to me. I think if I were to reset and start over, I might try the most free option, just so everything kind of gets filled up evenly as it goes along. I don't know. Also, setting minimum free disk space helps a lot for your cache drive. From what I can tell, you want to set your minimum free disk space for your cache drive to be like larger, maybe by 50% larger than the largest file you're ever going to move to it. So if you're moving 15 gigabyte movies over there, make that minimum like 20 or 25 gigabytes just to be safe. If not, if your cache drive gets full and you're going to write stuff to it, if it doesn't have space to add the new file, it'll just come back and say that your array is full and you can't add anything else. It won't start spilling over to your array. So just kind of keep an eye on that and make sure that you set it to where it doesn't think it's full and give you error messages, which is another reason why I removed the cache when I was doing my file dumps. It didn't really make sense to have it anyways. Another thing that I learned is that sometimes Unraid, and I don't know if this is something I did wrong or my server or Unraid, I'm not too sure, but sometimes Unraid likes to stop responding. And I'm talking the graphic user interface. It'll just stop responding, and I found it only really happens if you're stopping an array. right? If I go through, I have the array started, I've been copying files to it, I have to stop it to add a new disk or make a change to it. If I stop the array, it'll go through the bottom, it'll say, you know, stopping doing this, this, and this, and it'll just freeze up. The user interface will stop responding, the web page will stop responding, it just freezes up. Honestly, this has happened to me twice, and I've had to reboot the server, hard reboot the server after waiting over 20 minutes for the web page to start responding. And I kept waiting because I knew that I had a couple drives in Preclear, and they were verifying the zeros. They weren't in the middle of the actual Preclear, but they were verifying the zeros, and I didn't want to reboot it. So I ended up biting the bullet and rebooting it so I could get back to doing what I was doing. But just something I found, I don't know if it's a bug with Unraid, a bug with my server, maybe my setup, I don't really know, but I thought I'd mention it. Now, going back to the SSDs that I got, again, I bought two 480 gigabytes, but I also have a 250 gigabyte in my old server, and I have a 160 gigabyte SSD that came with the server that I purchased, that I used initially to run Windows so I could run some tests and things on it. That's how I was able to find out what numbers it was able to get through like Cinebench and some other things. So right now, I'm not entirely sure if I want to use the 160 gigabyte drive that came with it and use that for VMs, and then use a 250 gigabyte out of that in conjunction with the 250 I have in my computer right now, throw that in RAID 0 and use that for, you know, project files and stuff like that, things that are, you know, non-critical or have backups, but this is just for working files. So I'm not really sure yet on what I'm going to do with that, but I do know that I'm going to use another SSD, whether it's a 250 or a 160, and I'm going to use that to run the VMs, and that way the VMs run as fast as I can. I do want to install some VMs that I could use for test servers or for test computers, ones that are isolated from the network. That way I can, you know, try to run, if I ever have any kind of like fishy file, or if I want to try a program out or whatever, I want to have that test environment that I can just go back and reset if for whatever reason I messed up that computer or that virtual manager. So that's what I have to do still now. Right now I'm waiting for everything to copy over, which has still got a while to go, and then I'm going to throw that last 4 terabyte disk in there, start zeroing that out, and then I should have, after everything is said and done, again, like 52 terabytes worth of data. So I have 60 terabytes worth of hard drives in there. So that's it's a little beefy. That's pretty awesome. I'm excited, you know. I'm definitely not going to fill that up. I mean, as it sits right now, I have 5 drives, 5 4 terabyte drives that are in there zeroing, I think, and I don't need those right now. Okay, so they can take their time, because as soon as that's done, I'm still going to have 4 terabytes worth of space left. So I'm going to have 6 terabytes worth of extra space, or I'm sorry, 4 terabytes drives worth of extra space that I don't even need right now. So that's kind of cool. For the next video, I'm probably going to do like a recap of everything that I've done hardware-wise and the prices that I spent on the stuff that I purchased. I'm going to run through and I'm going to talk about some of the numbers that I was able to produce. I have tested the new server. It did run fine, with one exception. I was running a couple different streams and it came up and it said this server is not powerful enough to do whatever. And it hung for like 10 seconds. And I'm looking at it and the processors weren't working. Nothing was working, but it hung. So that was kind of one weird thing that's got me a little worried, that I want to really dive into and test. The only difference is that from that same hard drive, I was also copying 3 different files, or 3 different streams worth of files too. So I'm kind of thinking possibly that it had to do with that. And I'm assuming it had to do with that, because really my server was not working very hard when I was transcoding one file. I mean, we're talking like less than 10%, I think, 15% worth of usage when I was transcoding one file, which is not really too surprising. I mean, it's a freaking dual Xeon server with 32 threads that it can push through, so it's understandable for it to be so low. But my next and last video will be a recap, an overview of everything I've done, the prices that I've spent on everything, the total cost, and some of the test results that I have from this server. Also probably me mounting it, because I still have to get it into the rack, so that's going to be interesting. So yeah. Well, anyways, guys, it's kind of a long-winded update, definitely more nerdy update from the software aspect of it, some of the applications I've done, things I've ran into, problems I've had to overcome. Again, if anyone has any answers to why I've had to recopy things twice just to get everything over, I'd love to hear about that in the comments below. I'm not entirely sure, but every single directory that I've copied over, I've had to copy twice, and it missed some the first round, and I don't know why. It didn't have any errors. Nothing was weird with the copy. I just copied everything over to the new shared drive, and it missed some. So that's kind of weird. I don't know why it did that. So I'd love to hear your opinions on why that is. But until next time, thank you for watching. If you guys like this video or have any recommendations for me, I definitely want to hear those in the comments. Again, I'm learning as I go. This is all new to me. It's exciting. I finally did purchase Unraid, so I'm not a freeloader anymore. So now I'm just kind of running through and tweaking everything and adding the drives and finalizing the setup, and it's been really exciting for me. So now, probably in a week or whatever, once I get everything hooked in, I got all the drives added, I'm going to do my test, and I can't wait to make that finalized video with all the final pricing and the final results to what Zeus can handle and what I'm able to do with it. So I don't think I'm going to add any other applications like, I think, Couch Potato or Sick Beard. I don't really do or use any of that, so I'm not really going to get into any of that. I think I'm just going to be running, Plex Pi, resource monitors, probably, maybe, possibly network monitors, virtual machines that I'm going to be using for testing, and then maybe a couple other ones. But I don't foresee me, adding DVRs and torrent downloaders or any of that crap. I don't really use any of that crap. So for now, it's going to be pretty simple. But once I get everything set up, I have a lot of extra room in this server. And when I say room, I mean not only hard drive space, but I have a lot of extra CPU processing speed that I can utilize for anything I want. So that is exciting, especially because I can run VMs and use it for whatever I want. So I might find other things. I might give little miniature updates as I go along. I might even throw out some tutorials on some things that I figured out how to install. That way you guys can kind of follow along if you're trying to do some of the same stuff that I am trying to do. And if you have any favorite application, if you run Unraid, you have anything favorite that you use, let me know. I might look into that. I literally just went through community applications and found a lot of shit that I didn't even know existed, which was exciting because I didn't know anything about them. So if you know about any of that, just let me know. So that way I can check it out and see if I like it or if I think it's useful. I don't know. It might be something interesting. So thanks for watching, guys. Like and subscribe below. I appreciate every single one of you. You guys have definitely helped me, evolve this channel into something pretty cool that I've been really excited to make videos for. Even build servers that are way above my usage needs and requirements, just because it's fun, and it seems like a lot of you guys enjoy watching this video or watching these series of Plex building videos and learning alongside with me. So, I appreciate you guys for watching. Have a good day.